Explore the profound paradoxes of the human brain, where creativity and chaos emerge from the same neural machinery. The human brain is a 3-pound masterpiece of contradictions, capable of composing symphonies and imagining galaxies, yet vulnerable to collapse under invisible weights. The first paradox reveals how creativity and mental vulnerability spring from identical neural roots. How can the same brain that invents quantum theory also succumb to delusion or depression? The answer lies in their shared origin. Creativity and vulnerability are not opposites, but twins, born from the same neural machinery that allows us to imagine and create. The very openness and flexibility that lets someone connect distant ideas can also blur the boundaries between reality and imagination. Dopamine circuits that drive creative leaps also amplify risk-taking and mood instability, creating a double-edged sword. Studies of artists, poets, and scientists show higher incidence of bipolar tendencies and schizophrenia spectrum traits, confirming this paradoxical connection. The second paradox explores how the brain can be deeply self-reflective, yet profoundly blind to it. The brain consumes about 20% of the body's energy, yet understands almost nothing about how it works. How can a system be so self-reflective yet so blind? Our consciousness observes thoughts but cannot directly access the billions of neurons generating them. Psychiatric symptoms like hallucinations, compulsions, and mood swings remind us that reality is merely a construction made inside the skull. A patient with severe depression may feel doomed despite objective safety, showing that emotion can completely override logic. We rely on a biological organ to define what's real, but that same organ can deceive us, revealing a strange duality. The third paradox examines why creativity emerges from the tension between control and chaos. Why do moments of inspiration often arise when we stop trying, in dreams, showers, or states of mind halfway between control and chaos? Creativity depends on switching between two opposite networks, the default mode network which wanders and daydreams, and the executive network which focuses and edits. The magic happens in their tension. Too much control kills originality. Too much freedom dissolves coherence. Psychiatric conditions often push this balance to extremes, unveiling both genius and fragility in the process. The human mind exists in a quantum-like state, capable of contradictory realities simultaneously. The human mind is like a quantum system, capable of multiple contradictory states at once, problem and solution, dreamer and doubter. The brain endlessly generates new worlds while simultaneously struggling to stay grounded in this one. Let's synthesize the three profound paradoxes that define the human brain. First, creativity and vulnerability are twins. Second, the brain is self-aware yet blind. Third, creation emerges from the dance between order and chaos. The human mind embodies both genius and fragility, each inseparable from the other. The brain's gift for creation grows from the same soil as its potential for chaos, like flowers and thorns from the same plant. In the end, we are both the masterpiece and the mystery, endlessly exploring the paradoxes within our own skulls. Explore three fascinating paradoxes that define how our brains balance competing demands in cognition, energy, and perception. Our brains must solve three fundamental paradoxes: balancing learning with memory stability, achieving power with efficiency, and distinguishing reality from imagination. The first paradox: brains must change to learn, yet remain stable to preserve what they have learned. Synaptic plasticity allows rapid rewiring for new learning, while consolidation mechanisms protect existing memories from being overwritten. If plasticity runs unchecked, new information erases old memories in a phenomenon called catastrophic forgetting. Conversely, excessive stability prevents new information from being incorporated, freezing the brain in place. This graph shows how uncontrolled plasticity causes memory performance to collapse, as new information overwrites old traces. The brain uses homeostatic scaling and metaplasticity to maintain a workable balance between these extremes. Homeostatic mechanisms rescale synapses to keep neural networks near functional set points, balancing plasticity and stability. This paradox shows up clinically in various psychiatric conditions. In PTSD, Excessive instability causes traumatic memories to intrude and update inappropriately with new triggers. On the autism spectrum, overstability may underlie rigid thinking patterns and difficulty adapting to change. The spectrum runs from overplasticity and PTSD through balanced creativity in the middle to overstability producing cognitive rigidity. Exposure therapy attempts to reopen fear memories during reconsolidation windows, then rewrite them with safer predictions. The therapeutic process moves from fear memory through a plastic reconsolidation window to a rewritten safe memory. However, if this plasticity window is mistimed, it can accidentally strengthen the original fear trace instead of weakening it. The second paradox concerns how brains achieve incredible computational power on minimal energy. The human brain performs complex sensoromotor computations on just 20 watts, far below any supercomputer's energy requirements. This efficiency comes from sparse event-driven spikes, massive parallelism, and clever reuse of physical dynamics. Neural firing is sparse and event-driven, with neurons spiking only when necessary, saving tremendous energy. However, this same thriftiness makes brains vulnerable to metabolic bottlenecks that degrade mood and cognition. Depression and cognitive fatigue strongly correlate with impaired energy regulation, mitochondrial stress, and disrupted sleep. The brain operates efficiently at baseline, but has fragile energy margins that collapse under sustained cognitive load. After poor sleep, working memory and insight drop despite trying harder because energy buffering and cleanup systems failed. Sleep deprivation disrupts the delicate energy balance, causing multiple systems to fail simultaneously. Stimulants can restore cognitive throughput acutely, but often at the price of severe rebound fatigue later. The third paradox reveals that perception and hallucination arise from the same predictive mechanisms. Perception sits on a spectrum where prior beliefs and sensory evidence must be balanced for accurate world representation. Predictive processing theories frame perception as the brain's best guess, combining prior expectations with incoming sensory signals. When priors overweight incoming evidence, perception detaches from reality and hallucination emerges. In psychosis, elevated precision on priors or misweighted prediction errors make meanings and patterns appear where none objectively exist. Conversely, relaxing priors slightly can unstick conventional interpretations and facilitate creative insight and artistic vision. The same perceptual engine spans realism, creativity, and delusion. The difference is calibration, not mechanism. In ambiguous images, creative individuals more readily report multiple valid interpretations of the same sensory input. In psychosis, however, a single interpretation may become uniquely and rigidly true, resistant to contradictory evidence. Creative perception allows multiple interpretations to coexist, seeing the same stimulus in different ways. Psychedelic substances transiently relax priors, boosting perceptual novelty, but also risking bizarre misattributions. These three paradoxes share a common theme of optimization under competing constraints. All three paradoxes interconnect. Plasticity requires energy, perception uses predictive priors, and stability depends on efficient coding. Evolution did not find fixed optimal solutions, but instead moving compromises that adapt to changing demands. Each paradox reveals that the brain operates at the edge, between competing extremes, rather than settling at a safe middle. Understanding these fundamental paradoxes helps inform treatment strategies for psychiatric conditions and cognitive enhancement. Explore how the brain balances executive control and creative spontaneity, and why this balance matters. The brain must constantly balance between executive control and spontaneous creativity, two opposing forces that shape our thinking. First, let's understand how executive control works in the brain. The prefrontal cortex is like the brain's manager, enabling planning, maintaining rules, and correcting errors as we work. Executive control acts like a strict gatekeeper, organizing thoughts and filtering out irrelevant information in a structured way. However, when control becomes too strong, it suppresses spontaneous associations and blocks divergent thinking. Flow states reveal what happens when control temporarily steps back. During flow and improvisation, top-down control temporarily decreases, allowing increased network flexibility and spontaneous idea generation. Studies of jazz improvisers show reduced coupling between prefrontal and default mode networks during solos, then control re-engages to edit and structure. Mental health disorders illustrate what happens at both extremes of this control spectrum. ADHD illustrates the cost of under-control with elevated idea fluency but impaired daily function, while depression shows over-control with rumination narrowing the search space. Anxiety demonstrates excessive control through constant risk avoidance, which severely narrows the cognitive search space. Patients on high doses of antipsychotic medications may report blunted spontaneity, even as intrusive thoughts become quieter. Creative performance peaks at an intermediate regime that can toggle control on demand. This curve shows how creative performance peaks at an intermediate level of control, not too much and not too little. The optimal creative process toggles between spontaneous generation and controlled evaluation, switching states as needed. While training can help people shift between these states, individual trait biases constantly pull them away from the optimal center point. Now let's explore how the brain balances general intelligence with specialized modules. The brain shows both a general intelligence factor that predicts performance across tasks and specialized modules for specific abilities. A single statistical factor called G predicts performance across many different cognitive tasks. This general intelligence factor suggests a common resource, likely efficient integration across brain networks that supports diverse tasks. General intelligence emerges from efficient communication between specialized brain regions, like a well-connected network where information flows freely. Yet the brain also has clear modular specializations for specific functions. Distinct modules handle language, face processing, and spatial navigation, and these can dissociate after focal brain lesions. These specialized modules operate somewhat independently, each with its own expertise and processing style. Savant abilities reveal how extreme specialization can coexist with global impairments. Savants show islands of extreme skill rising above globally impaired function, demonstrating how modules can operate independently of general intelligence. For example, a mathematician with aphasia may retain perfect number intuition, while losing fluent speech, showing module independence. The paradox is that brains are simultaneously distributed and compartmentalized. Modules share resources through central hubs, while maintaining specialized expertise, creating both unity and diversity in cognitive function. High working memory capacity benefits convergent problem solving, but can actually hinder remote association when fixation becomes too strong. Finally, let's explore why memory trades accuracy for practical utility. Memories are not replayed like recordings, but reconstructed each time, allowing updates to keep knowledge relevant to current needs. Memory reconstruction allows flexibility, but introduces vulnerability to distortion. Each time we recall a memory, reconsolidation can remove unnecessary details, freeing up capacity and aiding generalization to new situations. Forgetting details while retaining the gist helps us extract patterns and apply knowledge to new situations more effectively. However, the cost of this flexibility is vulnerability to distortion, confabulation, and even completely false memories that feel authentic. PTSD shows what happens when memories become too rigid and resistant to updating. In PTSD, memories become overconsolidated and rigid, resisting updates despite new safety evidence, trapping people in the past. Exposure therapy attempts to reopen these rigid fear traces during reconsolidation windows and edit them into more adaptive memories. Creative thinking thrives on flexible memory retrieval that splices episodes into novel combinations. Novelists and artists mine partial memories, splicing them together to create coherent new scenes and narratives that never actually happened. Education actually benefits when students forget specific details but retain the underlying structure, enabling better transfer to new problems. The paradox is that memory utility often beats accuracy in healthy cognitive function. Healthy memory prioritizes usefulness over perfect accuracy, adapting to serve our current goals rather than preserving exact historical records. Eyewitnesses often confidently recall vivid details that never occurred after being exposed to leading questions, showing how malleable memory really is. In psychiatric treatment, we often must trade some memory precision for greater adaptability and mental health, finding the right balance for each person. Explore 3 fascinating paradoxes where mind and body interact in unexpected ways. The mind and body are deeply interconnected, creating paradoxes that challenge our understanding of consciousness, creativity, and control. Our expectations can literally change our biology through measurable physiological mechanisms. When we expect relief or improvement, our brain releases real chemicals like dopamine, endogenous opioids, and endocannabinoids that produce actual physiological changes. Here's how expectation triggers a cascade of neurochemicals: dopamine for reward, opioids for pain relief, endocannabinoids for relaxation, and cholecystokinin for anxiety pathways. The placebo effect is so real that naloxone, an opioid blocker, can completely stop placebo pain relief, proving actual opioid involvement. But expectation cuts both ways. Nocebo effects show that negative expectations increase pain and anxiety through real biochemical pathways. This graph shows how positive expectations enhance outcomes, while negative expectations worsen them, creating a powerful feedback loop. Remarkably, even when patients know they're taking a placebo and understand how it works, the effect still reduces symptoms. Medication effects combine pure pharmacology with context and expectation, meaning therapeutic alliance and framing matter as much as dose. Self-efficacy and belief in creative capacity directly influence how widely we explore ideas and how persistently we pursue them. Creative genius and mental illness share surprising connections, creating a delicate balance. Studies show that first-degree relatives of people with bipolar disorder and individuals with mild schizotypal traits show elevated creative achievement. This U-shaped curve shows the paradox. Too little deviation is conservative and uncreative. Optimal deviation enables peak creativity, but too much deviation becomes disabling. Mood cycling may increase idea exploration during elevated states, while stable periods enable polishing and execution of creative work. This creates a treatment dilemma. Medications like lithium reduce dangerous mood swings, but some patients report dampened ideation and creativity. Society depends on creators who skirt, but do not cross pathological boundaries, maintaining a delicate balance between innovation and function. Many creative individuals report explosive idea generation during hypomanic phases, but they require stable periods to organize, edit, and publish their work. Peak creativity requires both ideation from expanded search spaces and execution from disciplined focus. The relationship between conscious intention and neural activity reveals profound questions about control. Brain readiness potentials can be detected up to half a second before we consciously decide to act, suggesting our brain initiates actions before we're aware. This timeline shows how neural readiness potentials begin hundreds of milliseconds before we become consciously aware of our intention to act. However, we retain the ability to veto prepared actions, what researchers call free won't, showing conscious control exists even if initiation is unconscious. Our sense of agency relies on the brain's forward models that predict action consequences. When these models fail, actions feel alien or compulsive. When forward models accurately predict outcomes, we feel a strong sense of agency. When they fail, as in schizophrenia or OCD, actions feel uncontrolled. Creativity involves both conscious planning and unconscious processing, making authorship feel simultaneously intentional and spontaneous. This feedback loop shows how conscious and unconscious processes interact to produce creative output that feels both authored and received. Agency is real at the systems level but graded and context-dependent at the neural level, not an all-or-nothing property. Skilled performers often report automaticity, where pieces seem to play themselves, yet they retain the ability to stop on cue, illustrating layered control. Like an autopilot system, most processes run automatically while higher control monitors and can intervene when needed. These paradoxes resolve when we adopt a systems perspective on mind and brain. The mind emerges from interconnected brain systems, where belief affects biology, creativity balances risk, and agency operates across multiple levels. First paradox resolved. Beliefs translate into biology through measurable neurochemical cascades that we can harness therapeutically. Second paradox resolved. Creative excellence requires enough cognitive flexibility without crossing into dysfunction. Third paradox resolved. Free will exists as distributed control across brain systems, not as a single conscious executive. Clinical practice reconciles these paradoxes by focusing on capacities we can enhance, contexts we can optimize, and outcomes we can measure.